What makes America great?
What makes America great to me is that freedom, first and foremost. We're a country that's based on rights and freedoms. We're unique in that way, in as far as the world is concerned. You know how our country was founded almost 250 years ago. How that happened, the founding fathers, how we were able to defeat at that time an empire and able to form a government that is still in place today and functioning. That's what the country is all about to me. I love this country. I love history. I was a history teacher. I was in the classroom at Harris Middle School, and I had opportunity to teach pre-Columbus all the way up to Reconstruction. So, but I love all United States history, and the more I study it, the more I love it. You know, it's a country that's made up of just diverse people that come together for one cause, and that is to be a unified people that's based on democracy and on a republic. And I have many reasons I could go on and on.
When were you most proud to be an American?
I have many moments. I'm going to refer back to had the opportunity as an educator to take eighth graders to Washington D.C. for over 20 years, and a lot of people ask me, "Well, why would you do that? You know, wasn't once or twice enough?" And I always answered no, because I always enjoyed, in my opinion, that pilgrimage to our nation's capital. And what makes a moment that always would make me proud to be American is when we were at Arlington National Cemetery at the changing of the guard. If you don't know what that is, I encourage you to go online and look at that, and look at the history behind it and see how it actually unfolds. You know, the changing of the guard is a very respectful moment. It's recognizing those soldiers that had fought for our country. It's right there in front of the tomb of the unknown soldier. It's basically showing respect to all those that not only believe in our rights and our freedoms, but they were willing to fight for it and willing to die for it. And while that was always an important moment to me, because it hit me personally, because my father was a veteran. My father served in the Vietnam War. I was very blessed for him to be able to come back. A lot of families were not that blessed as far as their sons and daughters going off to war and fighting for our country and fighting for our rights and freedoms. So that moment always really struck me as I'm so proud to be a part of the country that recognizes those men and women that have fought for our country.
What, in your opinion, makes the Constitution such a great governing document?
Like I already said, it's unique. It was the first of its kind. You know, prior to the Constitution, you look across the world, it was basically monarchies, you know, dictatorships, kingdoms. And then this group of men, you know, came together, our founding fathers, and they compromised. You know, there were differences of opinions, you know, based on geography, just based on beliefs, but they were able to come together, very diverse, very different people from different parts of what was a young United States at that time. And they formed a document that is still existing today, and our government is based off of that. You know, and from there, they added the Bill of Rights. One thing I always look forward to when I used to take students to Washington D.C. was actually able to see the original Constitution. It's a little faded now, but it's even though it might be faded on paper, it's still strong in purpose and reality. And that's, you know, the Constitution, like I said, is something that other countries, you know, have copied in a lot of ways, you know, because it is a sound government that has proven to be effective.
What are your wishes for America in the future and maybe in the next 250 years?
I hope that it's a America that is still unified. You know, I think we're at a critical point in our history right now where we're so polarized. I pray and hope that we're a country that will continue to come back to each other, no matter what our differences are, whether it be right or left, conservative or liberal. I always like to think when it comes down to it, we will always come to that point of realizing how special our country is, how unique our country is, and how blessed we are to be in a country that, even though we might have differences, that we find a way to come together and do what's best for the citizens of our country.
What event in your lifetime, positive or negative, meant the most to you as an American?
Uh, I think, and I would guess that a lot of people are going to say this, but it was 9/11, September the 11th, 2001. I was in the classroom that day. And just to make a long story short, things just were unfolding that day quickly. I had a classroom of students that were walking in. I had turned on the TV because my fellow social studies teacher across the hall told me that it appeared that a plane had flown into one of the Twin Towers in New York City. At that point, we did not know it was a terrorist attack. So I turned on the TV. We had Channel 1 at that time. I turned on the TV and I was watching it. And as my students were walking in, the second plane hit. And I turned the TV off. Students were obviously curious about what was going on. I didn't know what was going on at that point in time. And like I said, as the day unfolded, we figured out that our country was under attack. And it just so happened, I was a football coach at Harris Middle School at that time, too. I was the head football coach, and we had a ball game that night. And there was a lot of discussion on whether or not we should have the ball game. Ultimately, our principal at the time, Mr. Saylor, decided let's move forward with it. I'm glad we did. Had an opportunity to talk to our players. A lot of questions there in that time. Eighth graders in particular will wonder what the heck is going on. And I told them, no, this is a great opportunity to show whoever's trying to attack us that it's not going to stop us from doing what we do in our daily lives. So we had that football game that night. And, just after that, seeing how our country united, I don't think I've ever seen as many U.S. flags flying outside people's homes after that. I think sometimes it takes a tragedy like that to make us realize how fortunate and blessed we are to live in this great country.
If you visited outside the country or from sea to shining sea, which parts of America have you enjoyed the most?
I had an opportunity years ago. It was in the early 2000s to go to China. I was in China for over 10 days. I was part of an educational delegation from MTSU that went to China. We visited many different sites there. We visited an elementary school, a middle school, and a high school, and a college while we were in China. And we also visited a lot of the different sites in China, including the Great Wall. I had an opportunity to walk on the Great Wall. This is always kind of emotional to me. A fellow educator that was with me at that time, we became close friends during that trip, and eventually he was one of my assistant principals at Cascade High School. He's not with us anymore. God bless him. But I remember standing on the Great Wall, just looking over this beautiful country, but more than anything, just being grateful for the country I was getting ready to return to, because, as we know, China is a communist country, has been since the late 40s, 1940s, and very strict rules in China. We had someone with us the whole time to make sure that we were going to be in check while we were in China. But sometimes it takes some Americans to be outside the country to realize how fortunate we are to live in our country. Yeah, I got two, and I've already mentioned it a couple of times. Washington D.C. There's just several things about our nation's capital that I love. The respect towards our soldiers, the respect just to our past. The different memorials. When I'm standing on the steps in front of Lincoln Memorial, and I'm standing where Martin Luther King gave his "I Have a Dream" speech, that was always just a very emotional moment for me, overlooking the reflecting pool and the Washington Monument in the distance. especially at night. It's beautiful. The second thing is my wife and I are big campers. We're big hikers, and we've been across the country camping and hiking. And I'm just so grateful that we live in a country that recognizes how beautiful our country is and makes a point to protect the lands and protect the beauty. We've been to the Yellowstone National Park last year. We've been to Zion National Park, several of our national parks. And I'm grateful for Teddy Roosevelt, one of our presidents, that made sure that these lands were protected where all Americans, if they wanted free of charge, could go visit these national parks. And I think that just shows us once again how special a country we live in. Uh, it's 250 years in the whole scheme of world history. We're still a young country. We're still a very young country. But I think once again, the world looks to our country as a model. And I hope and pray that as the years go by, we're a model that will that other countries will continue to respect and want to follow.
Thank you very much for this interview.